Aston Martin have massively exceeded expectations this season, so we shouldn't really be disappointed by how they did in Spain. But the team are. Despite Alonso securing 5 podiums in 6 races before the Spanish Grand Prix, the team never really looked in contention for a podium, as Mercedes appeared to make huge strides with their new car. But do they really need to be worried, or was this just a one-off? If they are worried, then what can they do about it? And what was with Alonso holding off Stroll for the last 8 laps? We'll delve into all of this and more in today's video, so don't go anywhere. 2 cars into the points on a challenging but fruitful afternoon at the Circuit de Barcelona, Catalunya, where Lance came home ahead of teammate Fernando, was how Aston Martin opened their debrief after the Spanish GP. Last season, 2 cars in the points would have been something to celebrate, especially as high as 6th and 7th, but this line feels off this season. Alonso should be fighting for podiums, and Stroll? Well, he probably finished where he should have. Stroll started 6th on the grid and Alonso 9th. Stroll held position thanks to Lando Norris's first turn mistake and Pierre Gasly struggling for race pace. Sergio Perez moving up the order was unsurprising, but George Russell's incredible charge from 12th to 3rd will have chilled the bones of the Aston Martin team. Before the upgrade to the W14, Russell would have struggled for a points finish from that place on the grid, but something has obviously changed. Saturday's qualifying wasn't encouraging for the race to come. With George Russell and Sergio Perez out in Q2 and Charles Leclerc's shock Q1 exit, there were plenty of places at the front of the grid up for grabs, but Aston Martin couldn't grasp them. Lando Norris proved his class, securing P3, and Carlos Sainz impressed in P2. If the first 6 races of the season were anything to go off, those places should have been Aston Martin's, but they just weren't in the fight. Lance securing P6 doesn't seem too bad, but he was 0.18 seconds behind Hamilton in 5th, which is almost a country mile in Formula 1. Alonso's problems started when he ran wide onto the gravel at the final corner as he started his first lap in Q1 in Barcelona. He recovered to get out of that session in 12th and then took 8th in Q2. With the car in a better state for Q3 after the team had been working on it for half of the session, Alonso believed he could still have made the front row, but a mistake on his final lap consigned him to 9th. The team managed to gradually repair the flaw during the gaps between sessions, but Alonso faced the additional challenge of not knowing quite how the car would behave each time he went out. Still, things in the race should have gone better, right? So what slowed Alonso down during the race? Was it just everyone else in front of them improving, or was there something else going on? During the race, they just didn't seem to have the pace to match those in front of them. They finished just over a minute behind Max Verstappen's Red Bull, who had an absolute blinder of a weekend, by the way. Their previous biggest gap to Red Bull was 38 seconds, so in the 66-lap race, they lost almost half a second a lap compared to previous races. They were also 18 seconds behind Ferrari's Carlos Sainz, whom Alonso had finished in front of at every race so far this season. And don't even get me started on the gap to Mercedes. I'll need a whole video to break that one down, which will be coming later this week. For whatever reason, the specific characteristics of the Catalonian track did not suit the AMR23 at all. That's okay, that happens in Formula 1. It isn't natural to be doing what Red Bull are doing. Sometimes one car is faster than another. These cars are so specialized that the changes in track characteristics between each race can cause the order to be mixed up, and that's what brings some of the excitement to the sport. We know that Aston Martin are suited to lower speed tracks, and with the changes to the layout of the course in Sector 3 this season, Spain was always going to be a tough one for Aston Martin. So do they need to be concerned about Mercedes? Well, yeah, absolutely. Aston Martin had a brand new rear wing and front wing and beam wing for Barcelona, but they clearly did not help the team. That is very worrying. When you are bringing upgrades, you expect to move forwards, but Aston Martin lost half a second a lap to Red Bull, while Mercedes found form to leapfrog them in the Constructors' Championship. Asked after Friday's practice if he felt his new parts are helping his performance this weekend, Fernando Alonso replied, They do absolutely. There is not a new part that we put in the car that is not helping the performance, he continued. That's something that has been always the case with the team from Bahrain, so I'm happy with the upgrades, and let's see tomorrow when everyone goes to full power where we are. The weather was very different on Sunday compared to Friday, and perhaps the track temperature changes made enough of a difference that Aston Martin were not in an ideal setup window anymore. But nonetheless, the drop-off in performance from Friday to Sunday was shocking, After the race, Alonso was far less impressed with his upgraded AMR23. "We didn't have the pace, so that's the biggest problem," Alonso noted. "It was not that we were unlucky or on different strategies or anything like that. I think we were slow compared to the Mercedes. Slow on the soft, slow on the hard. And we just concentrated on the Alpines, AlphaTauris, and kept up the pace with the Ferraris. At the end, I think we outscored the Ferraris this weekend because they only scored with Carlos, and we lost points with the Mercedes, but they have done a better job this weekend. So let's try the next one." Ferrari are not Aston Martin's competition this season, Mercedes are. The battle lines in the Constructors' Championship are already clearly laid out. Ferrari aren't involved in the battle for second. That's going to be between Aston and Merc, so being slow compared to them, as Alonso says, is massively concerning. Asked if the team's form was track-specific or related to upgrades brought by its rivals, Alonso admitted that they both played a role. "I think the track was a little bit not the best for us," he said. "From FP1, we were on a completely different setup from what we predicted, so we had to work a lot during the weekend to be happy with the car, which was kind of new for us. And then the upgrades from other people. I think maybe they didn't show their full potential in Monaco and Miami, street circuits. So here, we saw today that maybe they are a little bit stronger. But I'm not worried. There are going to be better weekends and worse weekends, and we'll have our opportunity in Canada." Alonso did say that he expects to see a completely different race in Canada. He also said that he will fight the Red Bulls soon, but still said that Mercedes were a worry for him. "They are fast, they are a concern for us. They've been all year long. They've been very consistent drivers as well." His comments about consistent drivers couldn't have been more on point. Hamilton will always do well with a good car. That's what his career is built on. And George Russell showed that he can make magic happen by passing Sergio Perez on his way from 12th to 3rd. Aston Martin doesn't have that same caliber of driver in the garage. Everyone knows what Alonso is about. He's a two-time world champion after all, who's arguably hitting some of the best form of his career. But in Lance Stroll, Aston Martin have a problem. We actually covered the Stroll conundrum in a video before the race weekend, but Alonso's actions in the closing stages of Sunday's race put the team dynamics into a new light. Alonso quickly closed on his teammate around lap 60, and despite clearly being the quicker of the two drivers, he said over team radio that he was zero risk to Lance and was just opening a gap to the cars behind him. Alonso could have easily made the pass on his teammate if he wanted to, but he coasted behind him and at one point was seen waving to fans from his cockpit while still racing. Someone on commentary said it was embarrassing for Stroll, and I have to agree. Alonso has already said he's there to help Lance become the lead driver for the team for years to come, but Aston Martin must be paying him a huge bonus for the coaching he's giving his teammate during the races. Brake balance advice? Sure, that makes sense. Giving him credit for a good pass he saw on the big screen? That was impressive awareness and a nice comment. Telling your team you're not going to fight your teammate when you easily could, and you're battling for second place in the Drivers' Championship? That is just madness. I'm sure Alonso is making an absolute mint at Aston Martin, and is just enjoying being in a competitive car again. But for Lance, it has to be humiliating. And for the team, Lance is going to cost them second in the Constructors. Despite being the perfect team player all weekend, Alonso did have some criticism for his team. "We still need to speed up things. I think Ferrari is already 2 flaws into this season. Mercedes was obviously a completely new car in Monaco, and the team has more upgrades here. Red Bull had a Baku package and another one here, so we understand that we're not in that position yet. Aston Martin should be concerned about the performance Mercedes showed in Spain, but more worrying is how quickly Merc have changed their car to copy Red Bull's. Hopefully the team in green have big upgrades on the way, or their surprise push for second in the Constructors could be over very quickly." What do you think of Aston Martin's poor form this weekend? A sign of things to come, or just a bad track for them? Let me know what you think in the comments down below, and until next time, drive safe and bye for now.